Hello, and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Jeff Poole.
And I'm Joe Lello.
All right, and it's just the three of us this week, so we're going to, Happy New Year, everyone. We're going to talk about maybe some predictions for what's going to work for marketing in 2018, maybe a little bit about publishing, such as we know it, give a couple of our own resolutions, talk a little bit about advertising and our recent projects of our own. And we've got a whole bunch of questions, too, on advertising and launches and stuff, so we'll try to get to as many of those as possible. So just start out. Do you guys have any news you would like to share?
Oh, what the heck? I can go first here. Of course, I typed everything up and I just minimized my notes. All right. Yeah, as for me, let's see here. I have my my NaNoWriMo project from last November. Is pretty much officially done, so that's about ready to give them to my beta readers there. So, and then I'm going full steam on my, I forget the number fantasy, but that's the second Pirates fantasy that I have a lot of people inquiring about when that's going to be done. Let's see here. The work on the fantasy cover is my new fantasy cover is progressing, so to be able to post some updates about that. And if anyone can tell from who's watching this to see the boxes behind me, I'm getting ready to make a change here. My wife and I were getting a small little place down in Phoenix, keeping the place here in Havasu, and I'm going to be going to writing full time. So it's going to be fun.
Awesome. Well, hopefully things will go well and the income will be there. At least Phoenix is not a super expensive city to live in, so
very true.
That helps.
As for me, in terms of news, I'll talk a little bit about, I started a monthly short story project, but that's going to be under resolutions. I also have got a pre-order out for the Free Wrench collection, which is the first 3 books in the Free Wrench series, and my NaNoWriMo project was the 5th book in the Free Wrench series, and it's one of the more extensive rewrites I've done. I revised it very heavily over the course of this month, and it will probably be done tomorrow. I just have to add some scenes to the climax, so that'll be happening. And then once I'm done with that, I can go back to what was supposed to be my next release, which is a series of short-ish novels in the Book of Deacon series. So I've got a weird pipeline with like 6 things that are half done, which is not what I normally do, but that's where I am right now.
And are those going to be kind of a standalone series within your old series?
It is my hope to put them together such that you can read them from scratch, and it's going to be centered on a character that people are a big fan of, but I'm going to try to make it so that there's not a lot of lore you're going to need before and after it.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing right now. Those who have been listening for the last few months know I've been trying to launch a new fantasy series and it's the first new fantasy I've done in years, actually. And it's in my Dragon Blood world. And I invented 2 new characters and set it 3 years later, hoping that it would make a successful book 1 and that people that had read the other ones would be excited to see the minor, what used to be the major characters now in as minor characters. But that completely new people could read it and just be like, I wonder who this weird General Zerkander guy is. And then if they're interested, they can always go back and there's 8 other books for them to read. And I guess for my news, I finally got that launched. You may remember I've been waiting on cover illustrations, not coming. They weren't coming as quickly as I hoped. And this series, I'm glad I was only planning to do a trilogy. It's turning into 5 books, but I wasn't really counting on it being anything huge. But me, I got to try and give it as good of a launch as I can. So because I got the covers late, I didn't really get anything lined up in the way of sponsorship sites. I think I have one. I don't even remember who's doing it. Maybe Robin Reeds or somebody like that. But it's kind of like, fortunately, so I went on to we've had Patty Jensen on the show before, and she runs a sci-fi fantasy promo list and also a Facebook group, and people announce stuff on there. And I went on there and said, is anybody willing to promote this? Because they have no ads or anything lined up. And I offered to, in exchange, promote their free or Kindle Unlimited book on my website into my newsletter. So I wasn't sure if anybody would take me up on that. I thought there'd be like 3 people, but a lot of people did. There's a lot more people in that group than I realized. And sorry about my voice, guys. I think I'm finally succumbing to all the people who are sick around me for the last couple of weeks. But so a lot of people were willing to promote it to their newsletter, and I tried the Facebook ads, and I've got BookBub ads going right now, and Amazon ads. So I'm trying to do everything I can. I put the first book up about a week and a half early on Amazon as a pre-order, which I usually only do 3-4 days early, enough for the also bots and stuff to populate and the sales ranking and the categories. But I thought, because we had Chris Fox on here, and he mentioned he tried to sell some books as pre-orders, using his Facebook ads without actually announcing the book to anybody, so he could see, like, he knew all the sales were coming from those ads, and he could kind of gauge which blurb or tagline was doing best. So I was going to do that, and then I've had it up for a couple days, and then I get this email from Amazon. Hey, Lindsay Baroker has a new release, or almost a new release coming out. Would you like to buy it? And I'm like, oh, what? They don't usually do that timely. I guess I don't follow my pen name, and all my last 6 releases were with the pen name. So it's been a while since I've got one of those. But I remember earlier, just as recently as early 2017, those would come like a month later. Like, I had the book ad, and it's like, you should buy this new book. So I got 400 sales that day. This was more than a week before the release, and before I had any plans to start really doing any ads or anything or newsletter announcements. So that kind of messed up my plan a little bit, because, as we've talked about, it's best if you kind of incrementally get better and better, at least in the eyes of the algorithms, we believe. And so here I had this big spike, and I'm like watching it go down again. I'm like, no. I tried to run some Facebook ads to keep it from totally flopping back down to like 20, 30,000 in the store. And when it finally released on Christmas, I hit the day after Christmas, I hit my newsletter and tried to get things going again. But I feel like I've been pushing a boulder up a hill. Like, it's actually like 340 in the overall store right now. So that's not horrible or anything. It's better than I've done with fantasy before. But I'm working it to get those sales. I got the BookBub ads going, I got the Facebook ads going, and the Amazon ads. I'm going to let it go a few more days, and then I'll probably just drop everything except the Amazon ads, because those are not very expensive. The other stuff, I'm just trying to keep the sales going in the hope that it will stick. If it even stayed in the top 1,000, that would be great. Because in the past with Epic Fantasy Steampunk, I know there are some that sell really well, and I salute those people. I was looking in the top 100. I'm like, wow, some of those guys released those books a couple years ago, and they're keeping them in like the top 1,000 overall in the store. But so we'll see. I unfortunately only have one more book to write. I released 2, and I've got 3 coming out next week, and 4 is about to go to my editor, and then 5. So I can move on to other things if it doesn't stick and doesn't sell well. But so far it's been really well received by my regular readers, and people have been really great about sharing it. Like I said, it's hilarious to me, after launching the Ruby series last year, my pen name for those who are new, that's sci-fi romance, and having that stick in the top 220 to 250 for just weeks and weeks and weeks with me. I mean, I did some ads, but not that much. It goes to show you that some books just have more potential to stick, and some niches, categories too. So if you're not launching into the top 250, it may not just be you and your blurb in your book. See how well you can tell looking at the categories too. Like in Epic Fantasy, I was noticing there's interestingly not a whole lot of churn. Like I said, I found several indies that were at $3.99, $4.99, and selling really well with older books. So that was encouraging for if you can stick, maybe you'll stick for a while. There's definitely more churn in the sci-fi romance category, but at the same time, there seems to be that really voracious readership that jumps in there and reads them right away. And I've seen some of the authors get as high as like 50 overall in the entire store, and you wouldn't think that alien abductions would be like as popular as mystery or like typical contemporary romance, some of those things. But that's how my launch is going so far. I'm a week into it. I guess I've sold like 3,000 books between all the stores on Amazon, and then I started a Patreon, and I've got about 120, 130 people on there, and I'll talk more about it a few months down the line. I kind of want to, I haven't even gotten money from them yet, but so I'm using it to put my books up there early. I believe I talked about this before, but now I've actually done it. And so they're paying either $5 or $10, or a couple people are paying $25 for no particular reason other than that they're awesome and they want to support at that level. I think probably most people just do it for like a month or something if they do. But so for $5, they get whatever Lindsay Baroker book I publish. And at $10, I'm also they're getting any Ruby books or anything else. Like I'm in an anthology, and I'll give those guys an anthology coming out. So I'm doing it a little differently than typical. Usually Patreon, like authors write short stories or some exclusive fiction, and I'm kind of just doing it as a way to kind of get around Kindle Unlimited, to be honest, because these are pre-releases. Basically, I give them to the Patreon people. It was like 2 weeks before the release went up on Amazon. So I have the exclusive box checked for this series on Amazon, and I take the links down on Patreon once it goes up on Amazon. But anybody, I told the newsletter people, if you're Nook, Kobo, Apple, this is how you can get it, even though it's not in your store. So potentially it's kind of cool so far. The only thing that's a downside so far is that Patreon doesn't charge until the first of the month. So I put my books up on, I don't know, December 10th or something. And in theory, people could just get the books and then unsubscribe, which I don't think anybody did, because they're only there if they know they want the books, and they're going to want the next one too. But I did hear from somebody that after a while, you may be able to ask Patreon to change it so that they will actually charge people in order to get access to the post. So I will let you guys know in the future more thoughts on that. And, I'm seeing, I guess we'll talk about this more going on, but I am seeing more. Jennifer, I don't know. There's a chat question. It's a Logitech USB headset. I'm sure that the rest of the listeners really wondering where that came from. But yeah, let's talk about that more later going on. Do you guys have any more news or questions related to my babbling that you want to ask?
I'm good here.
I can just weigh in that that whole big kerfluffle with Patreon, where they tried to change their fee structure and whatnot, that was supposed to be the prelude to making the charge, like pre-charge thing, where people get charged as soon as they sign up. Like, this whole thing is supposed to be happening so that they can eventually start charging people from the day they sign up. And there are people who are part of the beta program to do that. So at some point, when they figure it out in a way that won't hurt disproportionately different types of patrons, there's going to be an option for charging immediately. So,
all right. Well, I'll email them. I figure I should be a person for a person, like a subscriber or whatever you're called, a patron. I don't know, whatever you are, a creator. That's it. For a couple months before I started saying like, "Hey, man, can I have some special privileges, please?" But so I'll let you know in a few moments, because there's other people that are kind of doing this too, and just putting the books up on their website early, so people who are subscribed, who are not on Amazon, can get them. But there's a couple reasons I like Patreon, because it's got the social proof thing in there, because people can see that, oh, other people are actually buying from this author or subscribed or whatever, and you don't have to do any weird payment services. Like I know some people are doing like pay hip, I think it is, and I've never used that. I would be like, what the heck is this? I'm not sure. I'm giving them my credit card information. So, but we're gonna actually have Damon from Book Funnel on in a couple of weeks, and they've been doing a lot of cool things to help authors sell direct from their site like this. So he'll talk a little bit about that. But yeah, I blabbed. So we jump into some listener questions, guys?
Well, if you want to do a little more quick blabbing, Benjamin wanted to know in the chat, since there's this whole thing about going around now, chocolate's going to be gone in, 30, 40 years? Apparently, you've written a lot of references to chocolate in your books, Lindsay. Do you plan on removing all those references?
I have not seen whatever this news is that chocolate's going to be gone. I will just hoard. I will get my bunker up in Montana and stash away bacon and chocolate, the necessities that and enough that you could live on those things. Don't need any vegetables or anything else.
By the way,
chocolate's a vegetable.
That's right. It's a bean.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
that makes it a legume, though, doesn't it?
It's a plant, all right.
All right, it came
bar.
from
There
a
you
plant.
go.
It's good. All right, so jumping into some listener questions before we do our predictions. William asks, when should you begin advertising the newest in a popular series instead of the first book? Do you guys want to chime in first?
I'll go first. I think you should advertise the newest book in a series during launch, but otherwise I would always recommend advertising the first book in a series, because it's easier. It's the only way to get new readers, is to advertise an entry point. So that's my quick thought on the subject.
I mean, I pretty much agree. It's much easier to attract new readers to your books by predominantly targeting the first in the series. And for the record, I will start getting the word out for a new release usually about a month prior to its actual release.
Right. For those of us doing sci-fi and fantasy, I know a lot of us have series that are ongoing where you really have to have read the previous books in order to jump in at book 5 or 6. And so that's why I wouldn't advertise, say book 5 to a brand new audience, like people I'm targeting on Facebook or something, because if they did buy it, I know they'd be confused if they started there. So I will continue advertising book 1 whenever I have a new release. I'll drop it to 0 or 99 cents depending on how long it's been out. An exception is if you're writing a series of books that genuinely stand alone. I have done that with my Ruby Lions Drake Mandrake Company books. Poor books haven't been advertised in years at this point, but when I was actually publishing them, I would totally try to get ads for the new one because they were romances, and it helped if you had read the previous ones, but they were new characters or a new focus on these characters, so you could jump in. So romance is maybe one, or I think like Jim Butcher, those kind of books where each one is a complete story of its own. You may go for it, if you think people can jump in at book 5. And that's why some of the advice is often not to let a series go too long, is because you do end up running out of places you can advertise book 1. Or you just have to wait. I hit up BookBub, once a year or so for my book 1s and my various series. And I've talked about this before. If you do a box set of the first 3 books, that kind of becomes a different book 1 where you can do a different blurb, different cover, try to hit different categories on Amazon, possibly attract a different reader to what they were essentially the same stories. The exception was do a long running series if book 1 is still selling like hotcakes. Every now and then somebody just that book 1 sticks and sticks, and it's a bit of a lightning strike in most cases. But if it happens to you, then by all means keep those books coming as long as you enjoy writing them. You're still probably not going to advertise book 12 to a new audience unless it completely stands alone. All right, next question from Rebecca. How about telling us a little about your easiest to sell and hardest to sell book or series, why you think that was, and what you learned from the process, what you would do differently if you were to do it now?
Okay. For me, my easiest to sell book was the Book of Deacon, the first book in my series. It was the easiest to sell because it was perma-free in 2011, which was a time when perma-free was a very, very effective way to do things. Back then, there were tons of blogs that were pushing the rare free full-size books. There weren't as many free books back then, and Amazon's rules were such that you could actually make a lot of money by advertising free books because you could still make the affiliate money on that. So that was definitely my easiest selling book. My worst selling book is either Between, which is a standalone novel, and the fabled Pizza Dragon book, which is actually called Structophis. It's not a great sign that it is known amongst almost everyone as Pizza Dragon when that's not the name of the book, and you won't find it if you search for that. But they were both very, very niche books with kind of out there premises, and they were cross-genre, and not even my fans asked for them. So I kind of didn't expect them to succeed even, from the start. So I can't say that I learned anything about their release, except that apparently if people do actually read them, they tend to be reviewed well, because I do my best to write the books, even the books I know aren't going to do well. I still don't, phone them in. As for what I learned from all of that, I learned from the books that didn't sell well not to push too hard and throw good money after bad if it's not likely to catch on. And from the books that sold really well, I can't really learn anything from them because book 1 was sold it was released so long ago that the entire landscape has changed. So if I use the same tactics now, it wouldn't have nearly the same impact. But that's where I am on that.
All right, let's see. As for me, it would be probably both Insurrection and Amulet of Arya, which was my Bakken Chronicles books 2 and 3. What I've learned is that people love trilogies, and they really love complete trilogies. And let's see, the hardest would be getting those fans over to a continuation of the world in a new series. My Tales of Lantari was created specifically to keep the world alive, because I had a whole lot of people threaten me with all kinds of stuff if I just ended the series right then and there. But I learned the hard way that not all those fans automatically would jump over to the new series because I changed the name. So to do some thinking about that in the future, or ever do that again. But let's see here. As a result, I've learned to include excerpts in the back of the first series, which will tease the new series. That has helped tremendously. It took it a while for the series to get going, but when it did, the fans seemed to enjoy it.
All right, cool. Well, I have to say with Joe's thing about not throwing good money after the bad, that I've definitely found that to be true also. If a book is gonna stick, it's gonna actually do it without, I wouldn't say without no effort. Usually you have to put some effort into it, and that's why we say do all the things you can to help a book release well. Try to stagger the announcements and whatever ads you've got lined up. But the ones that are going to stick and do well tend to just magically do well with a little push. But then if it's not going to stick, you can keep throwing ad money at it and keep on just wasting. You could waste thousands of dollars easily, and as soon as you stop advertising, it's just going to sink. And I've mentioned before, it's not always easy to predict which ones will do that. So my best, easiest ones to sell have been my Dragon Blood boxed set, which is the first 3 books. To this day, I haven't changed the cover or the blurb because it's like, I don't want to touch it. Every time I would get a book bub for 99 cents, it would just kill it compared to any other book bubs I ever had. And now I usually just get them for free because there's 5 more books in the series people can buy. But what did I learn? Interestingly, the book 1s and the book 2 and the book 3 never did as well individually. So the box set, something was magic about it. And I did learn from that if you can get somebody to buy 3 books and read them, they're going to be way more invested in the series than if they just tried 1 book. So I continue to be a big fan of the box sets. I also did well last summer when I launched my Ruby book, first Star Guardians book, sci-fi romance, Orion. That's one that I threw some ads at it, but mostly it stuck pretty well on its own. Star Nomad, the first book in my Fallen Empire series, my first science fiction offering. Again, I did ads, but it actually stuck for quite a while in the top 500. At one point, I had 3 books in the top 500. Those were some really good months. And interestingly, I probably do worst in fantasy, which is kind of funny because I think that's what I'm mostly known as, a fantasy author. I've had better luck going into other genres as far as new releases and stuff go. But I'm with Joe. You gotta just write what you're excited about. And I rarely write something where I'm thinking, I'm going to write this because I think it'll stick. I think it'll make good money. It's more like I write the story I want to write, and then I'm like, okay, how can I spin this blurb and get the best cover I can that has the best chance that maybe it will stick? And I think that's probably the sanest way to do it. But if you're somebody that can say like, dude, reverse harems are hot right now, I'm going to write me one of those and go put 4 out, and they kill it, go for it. I love it. I've admitted before, I would probably just hose it up if I tried to do that anyway. So I guess that's my lessons. Do you guys have any more thoughts on that subject before we move on?
Not for me.
Nope.
All right, we do have some more questions from Twitter, but I think I'm going to put those at the end so we can go ahead and get to I guess let's do our resolutions first. Shall we do that since we're a couple days into the new year here? Do you guys want to share, as authors, what you're going to try to do in 2018 that was different from in the past?
Sure. Well, first I'll say that my official resolutions for this year are be less of a screw up and enjoy more. Like those are the ones like as a person that I'm doing. But as an author, I've got a few. One of the big takeaways I had from the Oregon conference that we did was Matt Buckman, I think it was. He releases a short story on the same day of the month every month. He also releases a novel on the same day of the month every month. I'm not going to be able to put out a novel a month. I know that, but I have quite a backlist of short stories I've written as newsletter perks. I cycle newsletter perks. I probably have 6 or 7 of them. So I'm going to try to do a short story per month. I'm going to release them on the 27th. The first one is already it's already on pre-order. The first 5 or so are probably going to be newsletter perks, but I'm going to start writing new stuff. And they're going to be short stories. I mean, ideally, they're going to be in the range of 10,000 words because I really don't want to sell anything even for 99 cents that's much lower than that. But some of them are going to be however short they are.
10,000 words, huh? I think I've heard you say before, you and short stories don't mix.
No, well, that's just it. Like I use when I write a short story, I start with the thought of it being a 3,000 word story, and then I'm lucky if I can hit 5,000, like on the lower end. But most of my short stories end up being 8,000 words with a target of 3,000. So if I can just loosen that up and go for a target of 5,000 and hit 10,000, I'd feel much better at pricing that at 99 cents. But that's going to be an ongoing thing. I've got a backlist enough that I can certainly hit the first 3 months. The issue is covers. I have not lined up covers for most of them, so I'm going to have to sort of scramble and get a bunch of covers, some of which are going to have to be sort of generic because they'll have to be for stories that I haven't written yet. So that's one of my big things. And then just overall, I want to get on a better writing and release schedule. Like obviously having a monthly release is going to help me with that, but I've only ever really targeted 3,000 words a day as my writing quota. And because I can comfortably hit that with still being basically a screw up during the day. And since I'm trying to be less of a screw up, I'm hoping that I can get that number up and also be a little more disciplined with book length so that I can get books out conservatively. I'd like to get an actual novel out every 3 months, which is not that much more often than I normally release novels, but I've never been consistent about it. So my resolution this time is just basically more consistency overall.
Pretty much the same thing here. I mean, for me, I like to increase the amount of titles released each year. And the funny thing is, I made this exact same resolution last year, and that went out the window. But I think my schedule should be calming down considerably, where I'll actually be able to sit down and just write pretty much the vast majority of the day each day. So I think I can do it. I think I can get an epic fantasy out with the amount of words I typically average, probably in about 2 months, and the corgis, which are a lot shorter for each month there. So hopefully every 2 months I'll release a fantasy. Every other month I'll release a mystery. So I should be able to get a significant amount there. Even if I just do half that, I'll be happy. But that's my plan, anyways, is trying to better organize my time and get a lot more writing done.
All right. Well, I'm already writing about as much as I'm comfortable writing, so I'm not going to try to boost my production anymore. But a couple things I'm doing is I am looking at also doing some short stories on my blog. It's something I did more early on, and also like interviews with the characters and bonus scenes. And it's something I enjoy doing, and I kind of got out of the habit of it because I was like, well, I'll make more money if I just write books, if I focus on that. But I'd like to have things to put up on the blog and not have it always be about the money. And it gives you more things to promote too. I put a short story up on my blog a few weeks ago to kind of get my fantasy fans to let them know, hey, I'm coming back to this world. And I had like 5,000 people within the first week or so go out and, I mean, I don't know how many actually read to the end. It was a 10,000 word story, but people were really excited and really enjoyed it and left a lot of good comments. And my plan with those is just to keep them for free, and then eventually to bundle these up into like the fantasy ones might go together. So I don't have to get cover art for each one. And then I'll just still give it away for free wherever, to my newsletter, bonuses, something like that for people. Because I know that even if you put it on your blog, people will want the ebook versions because it's a pain in the butt to sit there and scroll through 10,000 words on somebody's website. I totally understand that. And part of the reason I started the Patreon was just, or not really the reason, but I figured, they want you to put bonuses, like what's your bonus? What's your goal to help you do this thing? And I said, well, $500, if I get that, that'll pay for the editing of these free short stories, which is true. And so there you go. So more free stuff up on my blog. Because in 2017, I didn't even post on my blog like maybe 3 times for book. The last one was in May before I started posting again in December, and that's because I did the 6 books with my pen name, and I just kind of forgot about my blog and all that stuff. And one of my first posts coming back in December was a reader had emailed and asked if I was dead, so I thought I should do a blog post. No, I'm not dead. This is what's coming. And so just trying to keep the readers in the loop a little more. It's something, like I said, I did earlier on, but you can get so focused on the production side that sometimes you forget about just, emailing your newsletter once in a while, or even if you don't have anything that you're trying to sell them. And that's another reason for doing the free fiction, is so I'm not always trying to sell them something when I do email them, like, hey, come buy my stuff. So my other resolution is to go back to charging $4.99 more often for full-length fiction, at least anything over 80,000 words. I actually started out doing $4.99 or $4.95, I think it was, for all my novels. At the time, most of my novels were over 100,000 words, so I think that's pretty fair. But then I get in the habit of doing $3.99 because a lot more of my novels were in that 75, 80,000 word count. And I'm like, well, that's less, so I'll do $3.99. But inevitably, as the series would go on, they'd go over 100,000 words, and I'd still be pricing at $3.99 because I'm like, well, I started a trend. I don't want to jack it up on them. But this year I decided, no, anything over 100,000 words or close to 100,000 words, it's going to be $4.99. So that's just how it is. Especially with later books in the series, I'm not worried about sales ranking and that kind of thing on Amazon. And that's kind of one of my resolutions too. It's impossible for me not to try hard on the launch and I get frustrated when things don't go well as I plan, but I'm going to try to care less about what the ranking is on Amazon. It is tough when you're competitive, and especially when you're doing a podcast or something, and people will actually go and look you up and they're like, oh, well, her rankings suck. I'm not going to listen to her, right? So I'm going to try to worry less stressed. Question from Jen. How do you shift your thinking between writing 100,000 words and 10,000 words? For me, short stories it's a real simple plot when it comes to comes into my head. Like the one I just wrote that was 10,000 words. It all took place in an evening, so time is a little bit, and there was really only one obstacle. Whereas with a novel, you're usually layering obstacles. You might have an A story, a B story, a couple different point of view characters. Usually with a short story, I will just do one point of view character. Do you guys want to answer that one too, since you're doing some shorts?
I can't necessarily. I mean, I'd like to write some more short stories here down the line, but I haven't got around to it yet. So I will defer to Joe for this answer.
Yeah, I mean, obviously 100,000 is where I'm much more comfortable, and the last couple of novels I've been fighting hard to keep it under that because I know that that's sort of a better marketing strategy. But when it comes to the 10,000 words, yeah, I feel like the handy thing about writing short for like a short story is that you really only need to flesh out a premise. Like I've been since I've been making plans to have a monthly short story, if you have sort of a gimmick, like you don't need, how can I put this? My favorite part of writing novels is that you get to really deepen and analyze things. But the best part about writing short stories is that you can sort of ignore deepening and analyzing things and make an art of leaving things unsaid so that the reader ends up with 50,000 words in their head out of the 10,000 that were on the page. So it's like I exercise a lot more show don't tell in a short story because it's much more interesting to just give them little tiny fragments, let them build the rest their own. So that's how I approach it.
It's actually, I think, probably a good idea from a craft perspective to have to write some short stories. Because I did one for an anthology recently, and 8,000 words was the cap, and as many authors, fantasy, epic fantasy, whatever authors, writing shorter doesn't come naturally to me. But so you kind of find yourself editing it down, and you can be, I can say in one word what I said in two. Whereas if you're in the habit of just writing long, sometimes it's easy to kind of get these long rambling sentences and you don't even realize you're doing it. So it can be a good idea to every now and then take the challenge of submitting a short story to someplace where it's going to have to be only a certain word count. And even flat fiction, I remember doing that back in the day where you only had like 100 words or 1,000 words depending on where you were submitting to tell a story. So that was pretty challenging.
Joe, I've got a follow-up question for you from one of the viewers. Nikolai says, Joe, have you thought for writing your natural length and let the story stretch and then go back after the fact and break it into 2 or 3 novels for marketing reasons?
That is exactly how the Book of Deacon trilogy happened. It was one giant book that I broke into 3 smaller books, which is why the first one has such an incredible cliffhanger, because it wasn't the end of the story in any way, shape, or form. I just knew I wouldn't be able to sell a book that was, 450,000 words. I would have a much better time selling 3 150,000 word books.
It's interesting. We're going to have Mark Coker from Smashwords on in a couple weeks, and I've been listening to his podcast. He started a smarter author, I think it is, and he does this annual survey. You guys have probably seen it if you go to the Smashwords blog, where he gives you a bunch of data based on all the book sales that go through them. And one of the things he was saying was that the higher length books, longer books were more likely to be the best sellers. Like 105,000 words was the average, I think, for the top 100 bestsellers. So that was kind of interesting that to me, it seems like in ebooks, people wouldn't even be looking at the page count or the estimated page count, but apparently maybe that's not true. And people do really want to have their money's worth. And so it's just because I've often had the thought too, like you can't sell a 150,000 word book for much more than you're going to sell the 75,000 word book. So why not split it up if it makes sense? But you know, if it's going to be 100,000 words, it's probably okay. If it's going to be 450,000 words, then maybe that makes sense to split it up. All right, should we go on to our predictions on some of the trends that we think are going to come in the publishing and marketing sphere? And I think the guys both didn't really want to do this, or they're like, I don't make predictions that ever come true, and I don't either. So, but we're going to take a stab at it.
Well, I misplaced my my magic 8 cue ball thing here, so I was looking forward to try and answer some of these questions, but I couldn't find it.
Well, Joe said he didn't do predictions, and I'm like, well, I don't either. I'm just looking at what's happening the last few months and guessing it's going to keep happening. So that's my my source of these things. But I guess I can do mine first, unless you guys want to jump in.
Fine with me.
Hey, knock yourself out.
All right. Everybody loves to hear me babble. So I kind of hinted at this already, but I think one of the things we're going to see is authors working to lessen their reliance on Amazon and maybe caring more about building lists of buyers than just building a huge list of maybe there'll be buyers. And it's interesting because that'll kind of go back to what it was in the beginning. We were all just wanted our 1,000 true fans, and then because we didn't know how to game Amazon. Like we heard stories in 2010 that if you bought 20,000 copies of your paperback, maybe you get a good sales ranking and your book would stick. But back then it was all kind of new. We saw that people were selling 99-cent books and those were doing really well, but we weren't sure if that was the only magic, what was going on. And so like I know when I got started, I was just hoping the more people I could get to find my first book, the more people would get invested in the series and they'd sign up for my mailing list and they'd want to buy future books. And I feel like we're going to go back to that a little more, especially, you know, I feel like Amazon's been a little, this last year, there's just been a lot of things with the scamming of Kindle Unlimited and then innocent people being caught as they try to come down on the scammers. And the price is fluctuating. For a while there, it was on a downward trend, and there were a lot of people like, oh, I'm getting out of KDP Select. And so it's just, I feel that people are feeling a little shaky, even though a lot of folks are still making really good money being exclusive with them. I see more and more people that are just on the side thinking, okay, this author thing is going to be a career. It's going to be 20, 30 years. Things are going to change. How can I become less reliant on one income source? Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Are you trying to do anything to become less reliant on Amazon? I know Jeff's not reliant on Amazon.
I will pass this again to Joe.
I have to say that like I've been wide all along. I've only ever had maybe 1 or 2 books that were exclusive to Amazon in my entire life, and I'm very glad that I did. I thought for sure this was going to be the first year since I went pro that I was not a 6-figure author. I thought I was going to finally dip below 6 figures, but I just ran the numbers and I didn't. The reason I thought I was doing so poorly is because I was doing rather poorly on Amazon, but everything else has buoyed it up. I made exactly the same I did last year, but I made far more than half of it from places that aren't Amazon. So I Audible and my, all the audio books and Google is a big earner for me, and my overseas stuff. It all came and filled in the gap that I was losing from Amazon. So I definitely think I would be in a bad situation right now if I wasn't diversified. And I think that others will probably have similar experiences.
Ditto here. I've as more people probably know, I only tried one title. Putting in KU did not go over well. So I started, my books became popular right as the whole ebook craze just took off. So I would end up irritating quite a few people if I just try to say, okay, the heck with everybody in just this one format. I would be getting the hate mail like crazy. So I always want to make sure I don't have all the eggs in one basket at all. So I think more and more people are going to try, and if they're that reliant on Amazon, try to find other ways to say, just in case if Amazon gets too big for britches, or starts doing something they don't like seeing, try to make sure they can make up that income somewhere else.
Right, and I think we'll see too more people selling direct from their website, finding ways to do that. Like the early release is, we've talked about it before, you kind of need something that is either not available on the websites or it's a bonus edition or something if you're going to draw people to buy from your website, or like I'm using the Patreon. But I think we're going to see more of that too, because even if you're diversified in the 5 different stores or whatever, it's still, they tend to follow in each other's footsteps. Like if one dropped their payout rate or whatever, the other ones probably would too. Or, I think the ideal situation is you've got your mailing list that you control, you've got your website, and if you need to, if something happens, or just if you want to keep a higher percentage of the earnings, that's the nice thing about the Patreon is they get over 90% of the $5 that they pay for the book instead of 70%. So, I think we're just going to see more selling direct from the website, or from, I don't know how many people do Patreon. I'm trying that as a kind of an alternative to having to deal with the stuff on my website. But I think with BookFunnel and some other solutions coming along, it's going to be more and more viable to actually just do it on your website. But you have to build up the fan base first. So of course, Amazon and all the other stores are going to continue to be the way, that's where people are looking to find new books. So it's once you start getting readers, though, that's when you're thinking can start thinking, okay, how do I not just have them through Amazon? How do I have not control over them, but how do I continue to ensure they will be fans for life, whether I'm on Amazon or I'm on Apple or not. All right, next prediction. I'm predicting a return of some popular tactics of the past that have maybe faded from awareness a little bit in the last couple of years. One of the things I was thinking of specifically is the box sets. I already said on this episode, I'm a big fan of them. I think because you can no longer get credit for a zillion pages in Kindle Unlimited. And even if you can get credit for 3,000, but it's now looking like if people jump around in the set, you're only getting credit for what people actually read. I think this is the last couple of years we've seen box sets, more of them in the top 100s I look at. And I haven't been asked to be in one for quite a while, so obviously that's a sign that they are not as trendy. But so I think there's still a really good strategy, both individual box sets of your own books, as another alternative into your doorway into your series potentially, and then the multi-author box sets where you're all promoting each other's. And I think in the beginning people started doing that. They weren't necessarily trying to get onto the New York Times bestseller list. And that may be another reason they've fallen out of favor a little bit or just become less visible, is that it's not a guarantee. New York Times seems to be iffy as whether they're going to put people on there or not. But I think this will come back. And I think, permafree's fallen a little bit out of favor too. Having that perma-free book one, since so many people are doing Kindle Unlimited, and as long as your book is in Kindle Unlimited, it's free to subscribers. So, but I think that's going to continue to be a good strategy, especially if for those who are not just exclusive with Amazon and are interested in doing well on the other platforms. It continues to be a good way to sell books on the other sites. A lot of times I'll be doing nothing to advertise, but I'll still be getting a lot of sales on the other sides, even when I'm kind of focusing on my pen name or something else. And I know it's just because people are finding those book ones that are free and giving them a try. Do you guys think any popular tactics of the past will make a resurgence?
I think you're right. I think that the perma-free is going to become, a much more valued tool again, because like I said, I keep toggling, which my series starters I turn into the perma-free. And every single time I switch one of them out, that thing goes straight up to the top of the list. There's a bump in the sales for everybody. So I think more and more people are going to start doing something similar to that just to keep the interest alive in their series. Because I know I make sales whenever I get that first book into people's hands. So that's the key, is to get that thing out there.
Yeah, I think that a lot of stuff that people say like stopped working or isn't going to work anymore, I think it's basically somebody discovers that something works and then everybody does it, including the people who won't be able to do it well. And then it seems to like it's not working anymore because lots of people who don't do it well are doing it. But then they eventually give up on it because it doesn't seem like it's working that well. and then the tactic falls back into the hands of the people who are using it well to begin with. So I think that, like, things that appear to be fads and that ran their course, I think you're probably going to see a fair number of them start to work again, because the only people who are still doing it are the people who stuck with it because they knew how to do it right.
Yeah, that reminds me, I've heard a couple different people say, I don't think mailing lists are working as well anymore, because I think readers are getting burned out. And I'm like, well, no, when I sign up my newsletter to my mailing list, I sell a whole bunch of books in there because I track the clicks, and even if Amazon will probably kick me out of their affiliate program before long, I still use the affiliate links just because I want to know how effective it is. I don't even care about the 5 cents I'm getting from the affiliate sale. But so they work really well if your fans are the ones that are on them, people that like your stuff. And we just had Amanda Milo on the show a couple weeks ago, and she was saying she didn't have a newsletter for quite a while, and her fans were like, why don't you have a newsletter? They were asking for it. So if somebody is really excited about your books and what you're writing, they are not going to be tired, or they're going to want to hear from you, and the newsletter will continue to be effective. All right, next one is, again, not a huge prediction, but not anything groundbreaking, but I think we'll just continue to see more traditionally published authors dabble in self-publishing on the side. And I think maybe more midlist authors who have kind of stuck with their deals because they're continuing to get book deals, contracts, may decide, I'm not getting that good of an advance. I'm not getting very good royalty checks every 6 months. They may decide to try a whole new series self-publishing. And I think those are the people that can do the best because they already have a fan base. We've talked about before, like if you're a mid-list author in the traditionally published world, you got enough people to kill it self-publishing. Like with us, if we sell 10,000 books at $5, we make really good money on that. So, maybe that's a fail for traditional publishing, but good money to be had self-publishing if you already have a fan base. All right. Last one for me. I do think, and we're hearing this, that there's going to continue to be more competition. I mean, look at all these people writing a novel a month in your genre, and the same number of readers, especially in the US, in the mature markets, there may be room to in less popular or markets where ebooks are just now starting to get really popular, maybe there's room to do better there. I continue to be impressed with sometimes how well I can do. And, not that Canada is not a mature market, but for some reason my Dragonstorm book was made it to 79 in the Canadian Amazon store. I was like, wow, I wish that was more than 5 book sales a day. That would be really cool. But that's the highest, best ranking it got anywhere. So I think you can potentially target other markets and find growth and do well. But, mature market in the US, probably the UK, Australia. And so it's going to be harder to stick. And like I was talking about before, I think we're going to see more people just going back to the old tactics of not necessarily worrying about what the algorithms are doing. I mean, it's awesome if you can stick. I fully understand. I've made the money. I get it, how much potential there is if you can stick in the top couple hundred there with a whole series. But I think the focusing on just, whatever you can do, whatever promo you can do to get a few more readers this month than you had last month, and to build up a fan base, and just really worrying about pleasing the readers you do have and attracting new readers rather than chasing the algorithms. I think that's going to be more of a trend because people are going to get frustrated as it is more and more competitive to get the same number of readers that are out there now. So you guys, what do you think? I know Jeff doesn't really chase the algorithms as far as I know anyway, but what do you guys think on that?
I'll say that, yeah, I think that as we saw a huge gold rush because people were moving from paperback or from print to ebooks, and at this point, we're not going to see gold rush anymore because people who are going to be reading ebooks are now reading ebooks, and we're not going to see the normal amount of growth you would see in any other sort of type of publishing. And yeah, so things are going to get harder because you're not going to be the first ebook author that anyone ever encountered. But yeah, I mean, publishing itself was mature before ebooks came in and disrupted it, and there were still people making money doing it. So I feel like if you work at it and you're good, the tactics that that kept you alive up until now will continue to keep you alive. You'll just maybe have to work a little harder, or maybe be happy with a little less.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I was just thinking about one of the predictions we have here too with the like the print copies. When I first started, doing all this, however many years ago that was, I knew I wasn't going to be making hardly any sales in print copies just because everybody's going to the e-readers and whatever various devices they actually have here. I don't know about you two, but my print copies have picked up considerably lately, and not just because of the holiday season. It's just been going back to it. So and more I talk to people, I'm hearing the same thing. It's like I'm tired of these electronic gadgets. I prefer an actual old-fashioned book. So I'm thinking that the print copies are going to start coming around again, where it's going to be nice and popular, and to make sure if you've got titles out there, make sure they're actually out and available on print titles there, because it's going to help you out tremendously, because it does to me.
Yeah, I still don't sell a whole lot of paperbacks, but I do have readers that's how they read, and because they'll ask, if I'm slow to get the paperback out, which I often am, because I want to make sure I've gotten all the typo reports and things like that in. So, but and this will probably go into Joe's first prediction here, but I do think there's a resurgence in people wanting physical copies, especially, and it may be worth doing if you've got a rabid fan base for one of your series, doing like a special hard edition, you know, with like a cool, logo box set or omnibus edition, something like that. And maybe you can sell it on your site for a premium price, just to the true fans that are going to want to, and you can sign it. And, it's probably not going to make you rich, but it's
Fans
like
love
Joe
that
was
sort of
saying,
thing.
yeah, it adds up. I was surprised too. I was figuring out how much money I'll have to pay in taxes, for 2018, and I was surprised too, like how much came from like audiobooks and kind of the non-traditional sources of income. So it's definitely nice to diversify a little bit. All right, Joe, did you want to jump in with your predictions?
Sure. Yeah, my first prediction was I think ancillary stuff like paperbacks and audiobooks are going to be a bigger part of people's income for mid-listers, because I mean, as diversification, we were talking about how that's important, but a lot of this stuff, particularly paperbacks, they're really they're as set it and forget it as ebooks are. There's really no reason not to make them. And they also open you up to people who don't have ebook readers, people who want to have souvenirs. You can sell autograph copies. So I feel like a lot of the ancillary stuff is going to be more effective. Less so audiobooks. I think that audiobooks are going to be very important, but they're not quite as easy and accessible, which in a way makes them more valuable if you're able to do them. So I think that's a big prediction, is that sort of thing, the additional forms of your books are going to be more and more important.
Now, do you think with audiobooks, do you just mean because they cost more to make that it's going to be harder to make those profitable? Because I make a lot more on audiobooks than I do on paperbacks.
What
So
I mean is, it's less of an afterthought. Like, you have already written your book. If you need to make it a paperback, it's a matter of formatting. If you are the kind of person who's not getting approached by audiobook publishers and you don't have, $5,000 to throw at a narration, unless you've got a really good voice and you know how to work, a soundboard, it'll be a little bit harder to put one together. So everyone can make a paperback, but fewer people are going to be able to make audiobooks. But yes, once you make audiobooks, even though I don't sell very many audiobooks at all, I'm still making a lot more off of them than I am off of the paperbacks.
Okay, yeah. Next.
Next, I think specific groups of authors working together on Facebook groups and like that are going to be more important and more recurring. Like, I feel as though networks of authors are going to form, and like it will sort of be known that these 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 authors are always talking about each other and always helping each other, always working together. I think like little cliques of authors are going to become more popular. I see them happening a lot. I am a part of a few of them, and whenever I'm doing a story bundle or something, or if I'm putting together a collection, these people hear from me because, like, well, we've worked together before, let's work together again. Our fans know each other. So I think that's a thing you're going to see more and more, is sort of like, in the same way that you'll see movies that feature all the same actors, you're going to see promotions that feature all the same authors again and again. It will just sort of become familiar to each other. And then the other thing is, and this is just sort of supporting what Lindsay was saying, in the individual relationship between authors and existing fans will be more important. That's what indie authors have always had over traditional authors. Is it because we had smaller audiences and were by default more accessible? I think that that's what makes us more attractive to a lot of readers.
I would say
And
more approachable.
yeah, exactly. Uh, and as a result, like the 1,000 fans, that's the other thing is they say if you have 1,000 true fans, you can make it. If you are an indie author, you can make it if you have only 1,000 true fans. Like, so why not why not treat them as important as they are? So I think that's going to be a thing you'll see more and more of, and Patreon is a great way to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting because something like Patreon, or some people have done Kickstarters to fund audiobooks. I did that early on. You kind of find out who your 1,002 fans are, because they're the people that are willing to spend more money than the bare minimum to get your books, and they're the ones that get all your books. Not just, it's not like those are the only people you're going to have. You're also going to have people that like this one series, or they love everything right in this genre. But the 1,000 true fans idea is like, those are the people that just enjoy your writing style and will follow you and pick up whatever you have. And yeah, I think that having a good relationship with those people and being accessible is something indies can do, and we should be doing. With trad publishing, so often, like the authors don't control what goes in the back matter necessarily. Like, we can say, here, sign up for our mailing list, and here's our website. And sometimes you'll see in the back matter of traditional publishing, here's our link to our website, the publisher website, which, who even knows, like, who publishes what book? I sure don't. I mean, of your favorite author, I want a link to my author's special mailing list, or if I can get a bonus scenes that went with that book, that's what I want. And so I think it's going to be great to continue to put out those kinds of things, and that's why I'm going back towards it more this year, with more emphasis on that, because that's not only is it the thing that your true fans love, it's something that can kind of turn somebody into a true fan, I think, if they like the story. And then, oh, you're always putting out bonus stuff, and they're not going to forget about you between releases. So something to think about. But guess we'll let Jeff go on with his predictions.
All right, let's see here. First one, talking about ye olde Nile River, so we're not going to talk about the Nile anymore. Let's see here. Let's see. Oh, well, sort of. I personally see more revamps coming for the KU universe. I always hear about how they're always modifying how much they give. I mean, obviously, I don't have to worry about this, but I just see them, Amazon, doing whatever they can to, like, further streamline. Because one thing I do believe is they've got really strong security features in place, always looking for the faulty books or whatnot. So I can just see them further refining it. And I always imagine that if they keep doing that, it's always us, the indie authors, that will feel the pinch from it. So I see them making another revision somewhere in this year that's going to do something to it. It will more than likely result in less cash.
Right, I agree. I always think their rates are actually high, for considering they only get $10 from each subscriber, and those subscribers sometimes are reading 30 books a month. I don't want to see the rates go down, of course, but I'm just mentally bracing myself. I think that is likely going to happen.
All right, let's see here. Let's see how we go. Let's see how we talk about the whole print form there. My final prediction there is just something I was thinking about. Is everybody's always has their new they have their own proprietary format. I saw somewhere in the chat that, I don't know if it's true or not, but someone mentioned that maybe Microsoft is going to come out with their own ebook format. Well, I was just thinking, more than likely, I think Disney, as big as they are right now, they're probably going to come up with their own proprietary format. And of course, since they can make a buck, they'll probably offer their services to authors, and more than likely charge a little bit more than, or take a little bit more from the author than what Amazon does. But they might have a better set of resources or a better set of tools that get our books out there. I mean, I see Disney dipping their toe into the ebook format. But that's about it for my predictions.
All right, I'm going to say that's probably the most far out one that we've got, but maybe you'll be true. Maybe it'll be.
You never know.
You never know. Just, I won't mention Star Wars. That's a divided topic.
If you're talking about number 8, it sure as heck is.
I haven't seen it yet, but I've seen the talk.
We won't go
All
there.
right. Well, let's just wrap things up then with the Twitter questions that we have. So Dan asked, how are you changing your strategies, publishing or marketing, in 2018 based on your 2017 experiences?
Well, that's easy. Set the resolution and try and follow it. That's for me, anyways. I made the resolution last year, like I mentioned before, is trying to get more titles out there. But I had a whole lot of stuff happening here. I think this is the year for me. 2018 is where things are calming down, and I can actually get down to do some serious writing. So I'm gonna do everything I can to follow that set release schedule and get a whole bunch of books out this year.
Yeah, I let myself slow down a little bit more in 2017 than I have in the past, and I saw, particularly on Amazon, my sales rankings sag a lot. And well, I don't care about my rankings, but my sales sagged a lot. And so, yeah, I want to, at the very least, be more consistent and steady. And overall, I feel like I should have my stuff planned further ahead. So those were my lessons.
For me in 2018, 2017, I should say, my biggest selling series was from my pen name, which was supposed to be a trilogy and just a short, brief aside instead of being 6 books and taking 5, 6 months away from my regular stuff. But that was the best selling series. And so even though I say I'm not going to pay attention to the algorithms, I'm not going to try that stuff, I will continue to publish under the pen name and kind of dabble in genres where maybe it's a little easier to at least especially get those Kindle Unlimited people, man. There's the romance, every variety of romance seems to do well in there. Epic fantasy, I'm still trying to crack that nut. We'll see if my book actually sticks. Like it's under 400 right now, but I have a feeling it's gonna drop quite far down. But even though I'm, like I said, trying not to worry too much about that, I'm sure I'll continue to keep a pulse on things and watch what's going on and write whatever makes sense. But I will say that even though it's great to have a series in a year that launches well and sells well for a couple months or more months. Siri is talking to me. I seem to have confused Siri with my talking. I should say that my backlist accounted for a large chunk of my income. I am actually made more in 2017 than I thought I did because I thought I didn't really have a real big series. The pen name stuff did pretty good. Nothing else did really remarkable under my own name. But it is interesting that once you get to the point where you have I have about 50 novels out there now, that if you can get a book club now and then, or you just run sales on the book one or your box set, my tendency is to focus on the new thing and forget about things and just randomly get an ad wherever I can. But the more books you have out, the more you should be using them. So I guess that's one of my just ongoing resolutions is to continue to advertise the older series, especially the things that have 8 books in them. Why wouldn't you? Because it was remarkable to me how much of my, I was well into 6 figures just on the backlist stuff. So it's nothing to be sniffing your nose at, snubbing your nose at, something like that.
Nothing
It's a good
to
thing I
see there.
write. This is why I write, guys. So do you guys have any more thoughts on your 2018 strategies? Did we all chime in on that one?
I'm covered mine here.
Yeah, that's all I got to say.
All right, I rambled sufficiently. I don't even know if I answered your question, Dan. Sorry. But moving on to Benjamin, here's one for Jeff. I'd love to hear Jeff's thoughts on whether or not his fantasy fans are reading his Corgi mysteries and vice versa, or how your own split fan bases overlapped in 2017, and how that will or will not impact your 2018 plans.
That sounds like an essay question.
5-paragraph essay, go.
You know what? When I wrote the mystery series, I was pretty much assuming that more than likely I don't even count on any of my fans from the fantasy following over to the mystery. But I was surprised because it's one of those things where if the fans really enjoy reading about an author or that enjoys an author's works and they see a new series come up, even if it's something you're not necessarily interested in, you might give one a try. And I've had that #1 in the mystery series free a few times, including right now. As actually not much longer, and so they've tried it, and sure enough, I've actually seen quite a few of my fantasy fans move over to the mystery, and consequently, the mystery, since I'm opening up a new slice of the pie in the readership there, I've had quite a few of them like, I kind of like this stuff. I've never had a murder mystery where I laugh at it, so let's wonder what else this guy does, and he's got a bunch of fantasy. Let's go give that a try. So they're overlapping quite well. I never anticipated it. I never planned on it, but I am not arguing it.
All right, I'm actually going to kind of answer this too, since I have the 2 pen names, or the 1 pen name, the 2 names. And I didn't mention it when I was talking about my launch and how a lot of the stuff didn't quite go as I planned. But when Amazon set out that announcement, the also bots populated. First also bot, man chest. Second also bot, some other author's man chest. I'm like, no, this is my wholesome epic fantasy kind of stories with dragons. So I definitely have overlap, and the fact that all the most recent releases before this one were Ruby books means those were the also bots that popped up first. I don't have any proof with also bots, but I've noticed the trend where the closer the purchases were together, the more likely they're going to be linked. Like, even though all those readers had also probably purchased my old Dragon Blood stuff a couple years ago, that wasn't what was coming up. It was all the Ruby man chest stuff and all the other sci-fi romance man chest stuff they were buying at the same time. So that is something to be aware of if you're doing two different genres and two pen names. Ideally, you would probably launch like Chris Fox did without telling anybody, and then play with the advertising, try to get the targeted readers in there so that you would have other, I would have had other dragons in my also bots, or at least, you know, epic fantasy stuff. Even now, a week later, they're still pretty hosed up, and that's possibly hurting my launch, very, very possibly. But I'm okay with that, even though it's kind of like, because there's just no way I can put a book out at this point and people aren't going to notice that it's there. You know, because you keep your fans updated on your Facebook, like, okay, I'm working on book one, it's almost ready. And you will have people tell me they go and they start looking for it, even though I haven't said it's for sale. And so Jeff will probably find this out too when he puts, he has corgis in his dragon books, or his dragon also bots. At least says corgis are cuter than naked man chests, or at least different aesthetic.
I will concur with that one.
Jeff agrees. No man chest. So if you do get to the point where you're kind of like a mid-list author and you've got a big fan base, it's just they are going to read both books unless you're really hiding your pen. You do a pen name and really hide it. And it, you know, you want your people to buy the books right away and enjoy them. So I don't. It's so much work having pen names that I wouldn't want to keep them apart anymore. But just be warned that it will mess things up and possibly hurt your chances with the algorithms. But on the flip side, they're reading all your stuff, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I toyed with doing a pen name for the mystery series, and I was like, I really don't want to. I mean, I'm not going to actually openly admit to the fantasy readers that yes, I just started a mystery series, but just in case they want to look. So that's why it's not much of a change. But the mystery novels all have just J.M. Poole, and the fantasy has got my full name, Jeffrey M. Poole. There, so not much of a change, but at least some way for me to distinguish between the two, in case they want to think, is this the same guy that? And they looked it up, and sure enough, it is. So.
Well, I have two completely different names, but it doesn't matter now because so many of the readers know them both. It's probably more puzzling to people that don't know the pen name and come in and like, why are there spaceships and man chests on this dragon book under a different name? And so there it is. It is what it is. Better to be read and have people reading between your different genres and pen names than to not have any readers. So I so what with the algorithms, I guess. That's my 2018 resolution, right? We'll see if I'm able to not be too competitive.
There you go.
Hey, let me ask Joe, do you have any trouble with, because you're kind of writing sci-fi too, and fantasy and dragon pizza ovens. Do the also bots get hosed up at all because when you switch between genres?
My also bots at this point are usually just a hilarious, chaotic mix of everything that I've written. So yeah, I don't have consistent also bots. My fantasy, more than most, ends up with other fantasies in there, but generally speaking, if you look at my also bots, it's just a sea of other Lalo books, and people I'm sure would be very confused if they didn't know my proclivities toward every possible genre. So I probably should have done a little bit better at trying to keep them separate. Yeah, my also bots are not well curated.
I should remind people because it can be confusing. I think that it doesn't. We look at what's on our sales page as an indicator. You know, what the also bots are. It doesn't really matter what's on your page. It's that you want your book on other authors' also bot pages because it's free advertising, and so I want my Dragonstorm book to appear on Brandon Sanderson's books, you know, or as the Pern book just got Anne McCaffrey just got a book bub. So I would love to be on her also bots while she's having this book bub. But it's just kind of an indicator. If you see a bunch of wacky stuff on your page, then probably those are the books that you're on the also bots for their page. So probably my dragons are on some of these man chest books right now, and they're like, what the heck? So it doesn't matter too much. Eventually, like Joe, you know, eventually after time, the same thing happens with my books. It's just all my other books end up in the also bots because those are mostly what other people are buying within a short time of buying yours. All right, just a couple more questions here. Jennifer asks, what old tried and true methods will fail and fall by the wayside this year? What crazy that will never work schemes will succeed?
Yeah, I saw that question. I was looking at it going, do I even have any premonitions, predictions? Try to will fail and fall by the wayside. I really
Jeff thinks
don't.
you should find out what Disney's formatting is going to
There
be
you
so you can
go.
get in early
I'm
into the
Disney.
Disney store.
Here's my guesses. Old tried and true methods that will fall and fail by the wayside this year. I don't think that it will happen this year, but because KU is funded by Amazon just shoveling piles of money into a furnace, at some point I'm sure Amazon will Jeff brought up too, probably reconfigure it into a much different form at some point, and it might happen suddenly once they realize that they've got something past a certain tipping point. So that is a thing I think will eventually fall by the wayside. And for crazy that will never work schemes that will succeed, I'm going to say independently published children's books because I might have 2 of those by the end of the year. So I'm going to say they're going to succeed brilliantly because that would be very nice for me if they did.
All right, well, I will hope that they succeed for you. My guess is we've kind of talked about this, so this isn't anything unique, but I think you're going to see fewer and fewer people trying to build up these crazy large email lists of like 50,000 people based on Insta Freebie. And, you know, we've had the Insta Freebie folks on. There's perfectly legitimate way to build a list, but some people get so into building the list and just want more and more people on there. And then there comes a point when you realize you're not actually making very much from those people when you have a book for sale. And it costs a whole lot to maintain a list that large. So I think that we might go back to people just building their lists more from putting the link in the back of the book, offering a free prequel or bonus or something that's going to appeal to the readers of the book, rather than people just trying to make these giant lists and then going out there and saying like, hey, I got 20,000 people on my list who wants to exchange promos, and none of them are going to buy your book, but I'll promo it on my list. So there may even be some backlash of people that do promos and realize you pimped them and then they didn't get any sales. So they may not want to promo you back. So that's my tried and true method that may fall by the wayside. Crazy, what will never work scheme. I think we're going to find somebody that, you know, we've talked about Patreon on this one since I'm doing it now. And there are some especially traditionally published authors doing really well on there, but I think we're going to see an indie author that comes along and is just like, yeah, I'm making 10,000 a month from my website. You know, I think somebody's going to make it work and really get enough for their readership buying their books independently that they can honestly and truly say they don't rely on the bookstores. So there's my prediction. All right, Lana asks, I'm wondering about video on Facebook. It's currently overcrowding the feed with autoplay noise now. Are we oversaturating it, or is it something that's just going to get bigger? You guys have any thoughts?
Well, with Facebook, I just see it getting bigger and bigger. And I don't think they've hit the apex of their growth. So it's just my premonition. It's just going to keep getting bigger. Probably eventually overclock it to the point where Facebook starts streaming everything down, but it's going to get bigger.
Yeah, if you're seeing anything burning up your feed, it's doing that because that's what people are engaging with. That's how stuff gets into your feed, is when other people engage with it. So it's sort of the rich get richer situation with content. I think that the videos, I don't know that they're going to keep getting bigger, because at some point they're just going to have your entire feed and then they can't get any bigger than that. But I think that they will continue to dominate until either people stop engaging with them, or Facebook comes up with a new feature that they really want to push. Because Facebook will give a lot of love to their new feature if they would like it to catch on. That's how videos caught on. So yeah, I think it's going to be here for quite a while.
The last I heard, the Facebook videos were cheaper for ads too than the typical ones. I don't know if that's still true. Maybe somebody that's a pro out there and has been actually advertising their books that way can let us know. I have not seen too many author videos yet, but I also don't have a lot of authors that I've liked on Facebook, so I may not. I don't see a lot of author ads in general. I guess I should go like some so I can get more videos in my feed that I have to scroll past and accidentally touch with my finger, and then the stupid thing blows up and starts playing. But if you're an author and you're making it work with Facebook videos, let us know in the comments for the show, and I'd be curious to hear about that. I don't enjoy doing videos, so I never have, but I've heard people just do little walking ones, and if not necessarily to sell your book, then to engage with your fans on your page, that the videos seem to get a pretty good response, it sounds like. All right, one last question, guys. Andrew asks, when advertising, oh, we kind of already talked about this, but when advertising books in a series, do you only run ads for the first book or for each new release?
Well, typically I'll focus on the newest one just to give it a quick little news blurb. Hey, it's out there. But I'll usually do something for the first one, like lower it in price, drop it to perma free when I know there's gonna be a new one in that series out. So it's usually for me like the first and the last that I'll usually target.
Yeah, for me, ads for series starters, and the only other time I advertise is when there's a new book in the series, but that will just be to let people know it's out as opposed to try to push new traffic. Regular paid advertising always goes to the beginning of the series.
Yeah, same here. I will do a boosted post on Facebook. That's about the only thing I'll pay for on a new release later in a series. And then I will just boost it to my readers, not like a targeted audience of new people. And then often, if it's been a while since I've launched the first book, I will definitely try to get some ads for book one and make that 99 cents or free. All right, I think we have come to the end. Would you guys, I always forget to ask this when we do Just Us shows, do you guys have anything you would like to plug that you would like the listeners to check out?
Well, let's see. For me, well, my first mystery series, the first book in that mystery series is only going to be free for a little bit longer. I'm about ready to cycle it through to probably the first book in my Tales of Lantari series. So if you haven't read the mysteries or like to get involved with it, first one's free for only a little while longer. My fifth book in that one is about ready to be given to my beta readers, so that one is getting close to being released as well. And my fantasy is going full blown, so it should hope to be done writing that one by, I would say, hopefully by the end of next month. Knock on some serious wood.
I do have to say that your corgi mystery covers are really cute. So anybody that likes animal mysteries,
Well, thank you.
just because of the covers, you should go buy Jeff's book or get the free one, even better.
Thank you.
As for me, Free Wrench Collection Volume 1 is on pre-order now. It releases on the 15th. That's the first 3 books of my steampunk series. So that's my big push right now. My smaller one, I've got a 99-cent short story, the first of the monthly ones, coming out on the 27th. That's also available for pre-order right now. Although it hasn't, I just entered it in, so it's not everywhere yet. And that's called Entwell Origins Aina. And it's a Book of Deacon story. It's actually one of the longer ones. That's around 20,000 words. Again, didn't mean for it to be 20,000, but that's where it ended up. So that's, not bad for 99 cents, as opposed to some of them where I'm going to feel sheepish about them being 99 cents. So those are my 2 big things.
All right, cool. Well, you guys know I just released my fantasy series, Heritage of Power. If you want to go get Dragonstorm, it's 99 cents, but you should really only get it if you've recently purchased a bunch of man chest books, because I want to keep my Alcibots really messed up, because who doesn't get entertained by that? But anyway, we hope you guys have an awesome new year. Thanks for listening to the show, and hopefully some of what we talked about can maybe give you a few ideas or help you, at least inspire you to get out there and write more books this year. All right,
All
bye
right.
everyone.
Take it easy, everyone.
So long, everybody.